Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 123 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Alright, I've mentioned in the comments, glad y'all can keep track of what I'm doing. It's kind of a wandering path. And we got a lot of noise between lawns being mowed and fields being destroyed where they're going to build the world over there or whatever. But the last video I talked about doing patterns, paper patterns, full-size drawings, stuff like that, and how you rub and stencil knife and everything. And I've had some questions, comments, talk, whatever. So I thought I'd show you the tools, what I'm talking about when I say I'm rubbing and I'm weeding and I'm cutting letters and stuff. I'll put a link in the description to this. This is a stencil knife, and you can buy ones that are just a forged piece of metal with a blade on the end. This one has a nut on the end of it, and it's shaped kind of like a bolt, and then it has a blade, and you just loosen it up, and the blade, you can change the blade. It's a big long blade with one edge that's sharpened, and the way it comes when you purchase it is the blade is shaped like this. So you've got, a sharp edge here and then a straight back to it, like any hobby knife does. But this blade is, it's meant to be sharp, and you just keep it sharp, and it just gets shorter and shorter. You just, loosen it up, feed it out until you run out of blade. Well, what we do, and then you use this to cut, we use either get a piece of aluminum or piece of stainless, whatever, if you got somebody that can cut this. And it works real good if they can cut it on a shear, because they can just put it in and put the bevel on the angle you want and just chop and cut it and make this square. This is pretty important that this is square, and this is just convenient to have it, this shape. I made this one. I think I used one of my squares up, drafting squares, just to lay it out. But you use this to cut, as a guide. You put it down and you cut along it in order to cut your letters that you've marked. But you can, as we sharpen these blades, I'll see if I can get this close. What we do is, get it over here, is we sharpen, see this top, this is the sharp edge from the factory or whatever. But when we sharpen it, we sharpen the back side of it too. And so it kind of makes it into a spear point, and then you can cut, keep it short when you're cutting. And then as you're cutting your rubber, you can cut, and if you have to go back and turn, you don't have to pick the knife up and turn it around to cut the other way. And it saves you, some people, the sharper you keep it, the more, to a point, the quicker it rubs off. But it helps you get into the very corners if you're doing a lot of small lettering. But this is how I was taught how to do it. And you can do whatever you want, but this works, okay? And then when we've got a paper pattern, a piece of tracing paper, and you're using a regular paper, it's just harder to see through it. You do your layout, whether it's printed on there, whether you trace it on there with a light box or just tracing paper for your lettering. And then you turn the paper over and you trace the backside with a regular graphite pencil, just a regular pencil. Then you can lay that on your stone, and whether you've got to do it with your tape along the center line like I showed you. Get it on there so it can't move. Then you take the butt of this, and it's aluminum and it's rounded, and you just rub it. And you rub it hard on the paper over that, and it'll transfer, especially if you've got it on rubber, it'll transfer the graphite that you drew on the back of that paper directly onto the rubber. And so you can have your layout and have it perfect. And it's I know it's not the way they do it. We're soft stone, and it's very artistic to sit there and have your little dummy and tick, 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 and do it all freehand. But that's not the market that I'm in. And so if I need to do that, I can, but generally we're doing stuff that's laid out and we want it to be really square and really even and really consistent. And we keep the rubber on there because it's easier to keep track of the letters, because you'll spend far more time cutting the letters in granite than you will gently, where you can advance really quickly and you can do a layout and it's easy to reach it. So, but this is really indispensable. Use it if you're cutting rubber. You use this all the time for your straight square edge. And this is how we use our stencil knife. We round it over so it's a rounded point instead of just a tapered point like that, because this started out shaped like this. The blade was just tapered to one side and the back was straight. And then you'll rub this, and you'll literally rub these until you wear through, and there'll be a hole in it, and then you get another stencil knife, and works really well. So, probably should have put this on the last video, but the last video was already long, and so I just figured I'd add it on here. All right, I'm going to get back into swinging compasses, and we'll put this stuff away and see how it goes. And you can find out how to do rubber, to put rubber on a stone. Basically, I'm going to put the rubber on. And for people that don't know, let me just explain. I don't know if I've got any rubber here that hasn't been used. The sandblast rubber that we use, the masking rubber, the template rubber, or whatever you call it, has a film in it, a plastic film with adhesive on it. And then on top of that, it has a rubber membrane. And the way you apply it to the stone, you clean the stone off and you put contact cement that you buy with the rubber it's made for. You put that on the stone and you let it cure and set for a little bit to dry, to tack up. Then you lay the rubber on really, you have to lay it on perfect so that you don't have any bubbles or stretches or wrinkles or whatever, because you want a perfect register so it's perfectly tight. Because any little void when you're blowing it, sandblasting it, will cause that, will erode underneath that, and it'll destroy your stone. And that's really bad. So when you're doing, and I don't sandblast here. That's just not what I do. I'm not set up for it. I know how to do it, but that's not what I do. So I have somebody else do that for me. But you'll have that rubber, special rubber that you buy, and you glue it to the stone. And then whether that rubber has been cut beforehand, the old way of doing it, the old automated way of doing it was to have block letters almost like a printing press, and you lay it all out, and then you got this big roller press that you run over the top of it, and they literally punch holes either partially or all the way through that rubber to cut the rubber. But the plastic membrane on the back of the rubber holds everything together so they don't just fall out. Hope that makes sense. And so when you weed it, when you pull the rubber out that's been cut on like a press or a plotter, typically that plastic membrane, and that plastic membrane on the stuff we usually use is yellow. It's still there. You can still see it, but it goes away instantly as soon as you start blowing. The sand eats it up. Or you can put the rubber on and you can cut through. You can draw it on by hand. You can trace it, through a paper template and rub it on the back with your stencil knife, and then go through and cut the letters manually, to where everything is cut with. And this helps with your curves. You'll freehand them, but this will give you your straights really straight, so you can have really nice letters. Then you'll blow it, and you'll blow it in the right sequence so that you open the center, and then you walk it back, and you can go as shallow or deep as you want, within extent and within reason. And when you start blowing it, it darkens the rubber around it because there's heat and friction, and so the rubber goes from being nice and soft to being a lot stiffer and harder. And you'll after you blow everything, you may have to There's other methods, whether you're frosting the panel and you can do that first, or if you pack them with mud and do it afterwards after you've blown the letters, or, you know, there's a lot of different, it's a different specialty. And so I'm not going to get into all of it here, but that's the quick down and dirty on sandblasting stuff. And but we use the rubber a lot, and then you clean it off, and just even a citrus solvent will take it right off. Mineral spirits and water or whatever will clean it off and not harm the granite. So, but stencil knife, round it over, okay, to a spear point. You see that? And your triangle. Okay, for all that hand cut lettering you'll do. And I'll put a link to Miles where I buy these. I'll put a link in the description. They may have these squares. I don't know. I just make one. You know, that's the ones people I work with. Well, we just went out and made one. It's been here for 20 years. So, and then you can also buy the stencil equipment and everything. But if you're going to sandblast, get some instruction on it before you wreck a stone, because if that stencil isn't glued down right, if you don't have a perfect fit and a perfect glue up, you'll have a perfect failure, because it will fail, and you'll have letters and it'll be all blown out and eroded off to the side. And that ain't cool. Okay, I'm gonna put this stuff up and start cutting stone and see what else we can think of. All right, check it out. All right, I'm back. I wanted to show you something, because I told you about it. Remember how I told you these chisels would take a flogging? You could pound on them and pound on them and pound on them with the built-up sides before, and they'd take all the abuse. They wouldn't break. They wouldn't come apart unless there was a problem with your joint. Can you see how flawed that braze joint was when I built this chisel? Okay. You see where it didn't have a good agreement. I didn't get it fluxed good. It didn't set on there and glue up and solder up well. That's just what I did. So I'll put it back, but I'll put this aside and clean it, and I'll put it right back on. We'll clean that off, and I'll flux it, and I'll heat it up and run them right back together. The point is that even with a flawed joint, this chisel has taken off. I've been using this straight for a lot of this, but the majority of this rough work, and it's taken all that abuse, even with just a little tiny bit of the joint really perfect. I had to grind way down until I got it thin so much that it broke. So this will make a really strong tool, okay? And I haven't priced it to see whether it's cheaper than the V that some people use now, but I would guess that if I bought that carbide, those V carbides, they make them twice as thick in order to V them and have them taper and go down and meet the tool. So I would assume they'd cost about twice as much per length. So whether it saves you money or not, I don't know. But we'll put this in the coffee can, grab another chisel, keep going. All right, I'm gonna make an executive decision here. We're gonna make some changes. I showed you how to set up a triangle and showed you multiple ways to build it, whether you're building it and it's an isosceles, whether you're in proportion, whether you're under a factor of 2 to 1. It's going to be an isosceles triangle because you're going to have 2 equal sides, even if you set it up and call it a right triangle, because it's laid on its side. You're going to have one side that's even and one side that's even versus one side that's even and one side that's even. And it's how you apply your sides are still in the same mathematical relationship to each other, because you've got the same angles, the same included angles, interior angles on that triangle. So, now I'm sure this has got nothing to do with me getting old and probably needing glasses and can't see what I'm doing and all that other stuff, but I'm swinging it from the top the way I've always done it. Okay, and so this is my isosceles triangle. I'm thinking that I'm going to be able to perform faster if I do it set up as the right triangle method, where it's the sides are on a different side, and so I'm just going to use the same triangle and I'm going to apply it a different way. We got to make a nail, because it's got to work from a different corner. okay, different angles. And so I'm going to show you how we drill this perfectly in the center on the drill press, okay? So we'll chuck the drill bit upside down in the drill press, just hold it in there, run it down into a vise, tighten the vise, loosen the chuck and let it back off, and when you put the drill in, put the nail in, clamp it in tight, and it's perfectly in the center. We don't have to guess where it is, okay? Check this out. Oh, come on. See, I got it marked. And I'll go just a little bit deeper. Yeah, that's better. That's the easy way to drill a hole right in the center. Okay, now we'll go drill a hole in the board. All right. Got a perfect nail. But we have to set up our triangle different because we're gonna, remember how when we did the isosceles, the right triangle method, or you know, the way you can do it if you're gonna enlarge beyond the factor 2, where you put the caliper in a corner and then walk it over, and if you're under a 1-to-1, under 2-to-1, you just put it in there and you walk it, you pivot, and you strike on the hypotenuse on the long side, okay? So we're going to do that. On this triangle, and I'm just going to grab this here. I think you can see my corner is over here. This is where my 6-foot mark is. My 4-foot, that's 4 feet, and this is 6 foot to the other one. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put a line all the way across. But if I take a measurement and start in that corner and then go up here on this line, set it in, and then go over and strike it. Well, if it, you know, you do it the right way, you put it in here, and then you go over and you strike your line. Then you only have to find that one strike in order to place your caliper. Put it in the origin and you stretch it to that one strike. And you can find that easier because you're only looking for one strike. On this, I strike it twice. And this is what I'm comfortable with because this is what I've always done. I never needed to show anybody how to do this. And so this is what I've always done, but I think by doing this, I'm only going to have to look for one swipe because I'm always going to be able to just stick my caliper in this origin point. And if that saves me, you know, if I shoot, just say I'm shooting 30 points, and that saves me a minute because it takes me 2 seconds to find the swipe and which one is it because I got a whole bunch. It's this one, I got to check again. If it saves me a little bit of time on that point, then it's going to add up. And over the course of the job, it could save me literally hours. So I'm going to do it. Now, I'm using the same triangle. So all of my fun, because I thought about drawing a triangle up and doing it different. I don't need to. All I've got to do, the hard part's going to be, I don't have a 6-foot straight edge. My straight edge is like 5 feet long. So I got to mark this really carefully so that it's really accurate all the way across. So I've got a straight line that connects both sides. And I'll do that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drill. I'm going to drill a hole right there because the cut ends on a nail can cause it to drift when you're trying to put it in accurate. And by having a starter hole drilled, then it's going to be easier to keep it right on that line where I want it to be. And then I can put my caliper in there and it's never going to fail. Now, this could be a problem if you're trying to reuse the board because of how you construct future triangles. That's why I've always used it, because I've always worked off that apex and I just erase and do and whatever, but this is what I'm going to do. So. And that's it. Now we'll drive that in there and mark this up. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Moved a couple screws. Got my ink pen and my second ink pen. Drew a good line on there. Now, when I take a measurement and I apply it, instead of going here, strike, strike, and then finding it, and finding it. Okay, instead of doing that, I can go into this nail and I'll strike on, I'll insert it on this line. Okay? Oh, I guess you can't really see it. I'll start on this nail here and I'll insert it and then I'll twist it and I'll strike on that line. Then I'll go here and I'll expand the compass to fit. And with the same triangle, you see this is that compass with the bad joint, so it moved just in that little bit. Strike, strike. Okay, got our triangle. We'll go over here. We'll start at this nail instead. Insert it on that line, walk it, strike it, and then this should be the same exact fit. The only thing you got to keep track of is that this is a much steeper swipe. I'm going to bring this over and show you. This is the pitfall of this method. So you have to be careful about how you shoot and where you reach, because it's a more of an angle and it can confuse you. Okay, so but that's where the intersection is, and it's the same as up here. Okay, look at this line. Okay, these swipes are basically 90 degrees. Will that focus in there? Okay, there we go. These strikes from the top are basically 90 degrees, okay? We go down here to this nail, and these strikes are sloped a lot more. See if we can get that to focus in right there. There we go. And so you have to make sure that you mark your intersection and not out here, because it's going to be a very fine line where it crosses. So you just have to stay accurate. But as long as you're consistent, you know, if you always shoot one side or the other, you're just as accurate as you are on these, because you've got to make sure you hit those. So this will all swipe here, but we'll put in, go up here, walk it, and then strike it, and then expand it. All right? Get back into focus on the job now. We'll get to work. All right, there probably ain't going to be time to do a whole lot more on this video, and I'll just keep it a little short because there won't be much more to show you that I can think of right now. Before anybody grumbles, yes, I know the difference between a right triangle and one that's not a right triangle. When I call it a right triangle, that's what Dario called it, because you set it up and it looks like a long, skinny triangle, and they go up, and he just called it a right triangle method. And so that's good enough for me. I'm not going to question him or argue him about semantics over that. You could drop a line and it'll look just like a right triangle. You don't need to, because you don't have your side isn't that long. But that's the way I was introduced to it. That's what I was told. Okay, and this is the way the function works. So, but I'm hoping it's going to save me time and make it a little faster, where I only have to hunt or remember one strike. Because when I really ought to get a new piece of board, because I've sanded it and it's old, it's hard, it's cut up. You know, if you've never done any construction work, you'll find out that the people that are the real professionals, you say, oh, hey man, I got a truck full of 2x4s or 2x8s. They've been in the building for 13 years. They're brand new. They don't want them, because you can't just sink a nail, bang, one hit with them, because they're hard. They get harder as they dry out and age. And the board's the same way. The compasses don't cut as well. You have to keep them sharp more. I mean, these are really sharp, and you still have to work them to cut that wood. It doesn't just make the nice clean swipe that a brand new board will. But I'm cheap. Okay, I've had that board for years. I used it before and used it again, and I'll use it this time, and maybe before the next job I'll replace it. I don't know, but you know, it's money. You know, everything costs money. You know, so when you've got a whole bunch of swipes and stuff you've sanded out, and you're going to find that you're working in areas that, even if you work in the same area, you're going to have a lot of cuts that are very close. And then as you work up in this other area, you're going to have like a short one and a long one from the bottom. And then when you go down here and you cut in the same relative place, you just basically reverse those two. So you're going to swipe like right on the same line, or within the width of the line, the width of your stripe. They're going to cut, and you'll end up having loss in your board. The wood will fall out, and you're trying to keep track of and when you've got, you know, a short distance, relatively short distance, and you've got, you know, you might have 10, you might have 20 or 30 swipes that are all in there, because you may be an equidistance here for this point that you were from here. And so you end up having a lot of strikes in very concentrated areas, just by virtue of the process. And I don't know why, it's just the way it works out. You know, it's you know, that bird poops on your windshield instead of right beside your car. You know, I mean, why not, you know? So, but you'll end up having a lot of swipes, and it can get confusing. And when you've got that many swipes and you've got to look for them on two lines instead of just one, that's what I'm trying to skip. And so if I can eliminate a little bit of that confusion and streamline the process, but like I said, I never really thought about it a whole lot. I did what I was told, and I did what I was trained to do, and I didn't really matter to me what somebody else did, because I knew what I was trained to do, and I knew what worked. And I've got to make sure that my results work, because I've got to meet my customers' needs. You know, when I say customers, they may be professionals that can, you know, ruin my reputation in the industry and say, yeah, Button blew it, man. We trusted him, and he couldn't do what he said he could do, and I'm not calling him again. Or it may be that we're doing a job for an individual, and they may not just be an individual, they may have like millions of individual dollar bills behind their name, and they can show me the door if I screw up their job. So I've got to make sure that I've got great results. And through the process really of doing these videos and really trying to consolidate all this knowledge about how the different triangles work, I'm thinking that doing this one's probably going to save me time and work a little bit faster and be a little easier to take care of. Now, on the next one, probably I'll construct the triangle differently than I've done this one, just for placement. Like if I inverted it, flipped it upside down, that long line would be right up here in the middle where it'd be real easy to swing down and then swing up, and it's right there in front of me instead of having to bend down. But, you know, all I gotta do is spend 75 bucks or whatever buying a piece of plywood, and I ain't gonna do that. I'm gonna work with this triangle instead of trying to lay another one out exactly the same, because if I make it just a little bit different, it's gonna change what I'm doing. And I know that triangle has already started and worked well for this. I'm just gonna keep it that way. Have started up on her sleeve. This should be the tip of her elbow. These are points along her folds on her forearm right in here, and then we've got a couple point shot already for the cuff, and so they're right up near the top. She should have really good forward motion off of this stone, because this is, you know, this is like a I don't even know if that's a 1/4 inch deep. So we've got, and that's right up near the top. So we're gonna have, if this is a 1/4 inch deep and this is where it ends up finishing, you know, right at that level, then that's going to be projected 3/4 of an inch past the plinth, and it's going to make her look like she's coming right off the stone. So that's really great. But once you start getting the hang of it and you get your compasses sorted out and you're working in small areas, you're not trading compasses around trying to get everything started when you're trying to, you know, shoot different points that aren't really close to each other. And as you take off small amounts of stone, as you know where you're at, it's really fast, and you can really avoid, you know, erosion issues around a point like we had over here, because you know exactly where it is, and you can carefully approach it. So I'll keep cutting. But we'll wrap this video up and put it on the famous interweb. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.